morning, good afternoon, good evening. I've said on this platform that Zimbabwe is a failed state. Today, the nation is observing its 45th year of independence. And in those 45 years, the nation has been drifting deeper and deeper into the economic and political abyss. At this point in time, one has got to reflect whether or not the people themselves even realize it. Or are we, or if they reach the point where they've given up altogether, they've resigned to their situation and are just making the best of it. Ben, what do you think?
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. It's a very good question to say. 45 years of independence. What have we as the citizens have to show for it? What have we achieved under this our so-called independence? And the true answer to that, is a testament of our 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 happiness as the citizens. Yesterday I mentioned that the uh, we are ranked the fifth unhappiest country in the entire world. Our GDP is a testament of our livelihood, economic growth under for the past 45 years. We have a citizen that is living on $1 per day. You know, those that is the evidence to show what we have achieved in the 45 years of self-rule. And I must say, we really have fared badly in this past 45 years.
Well, let's just watch a video of the independence celebration in Gokwe. You've got to admire their determination to march on. The show must go on. Never mind. The tragedy with Zimbabwe is we have been marching on when we can see things are not going on well. The country is in a mess, in a serious mess. These celebrations are being held in Nyambuzia, in Gokwe. The road to Nyambuzia, people have been saying it's in a terrible state. And just a few days before the celebration, graders were sent in and they filled up the potholes. Unfortunately, the heavy rains, have washed away the gravel. And the whole road was a danger. This underlines the problem. This regime has been trying to whitewash things to appear as if everything is going on well, when everyone can see things are not going on well. The whole the place where the celebrations were taking place, you can see there wasn't really any effort made to prepare the ground properly to make sure that the ceremony can go ahead. It was a kia job, and hence the reason why we see all this mud puddling. This is absolutely unbelievable. Ben.
You know, I was just laughing to myself when I saw this video to say, surely the guy had to make everybody turn there and have a dip in the mud. You know, but you know, look at it this way. You know, we have a regime, and I've always said this: a regime that is full of underachievers. ZANU PF is making song and dance to say they've created employment of over 1,700 persons to prepare for these events, you know, and they are saying, you know, this is the power of, you know, the Second Republic. And I'm thinking to myself, look, this is just a one-day event. Tomorrow, those 1,700 are probably out of a job. Do you really need to mention that you have created, you know, employment? You know, sometimes I think, you know, some people are just uh, sarcastic. They really don't care about the people, and they never will. And it is quite unfortunate that, you know, as Zimbabweans, it has taken us, you know, 45 years to start realizing that, you know, all this is just being done to spite and to laugh, you know, in our faces. This regime has got nothing to do with the people as long as they keep, you know, hold of power and you know, further their own, you know, ambitions as ZANU PF. ZANU PF must, you know, must go on, and like you said, the show must go on. You know, whether there's hell or high seas, it should just go on just for them. How selfish is that?
Well, in this particular case, I totally agree with you that the regime would have employed some people to do the preparatory work. The problem is the usual suspects will be employed, and they will cream off the money that should be used to do a proper job. And at the end of the day, a shoddy job is done. And as usual, it's done the very last minute. Because there really is no reason why, if they knew they were going to have so many people coming, to the independence celebration. They could not do a better job than what we can see here. It's not impossible to think what could have been done, but this is what we are looking at. As you can see, whatever grading was done, it was so poorly made to the point where the rains, when they came, it was not being drained away. And so it made the whole place was turned into mud. Just like everything else that this regime has done. Nothing really works. This was done just ahead of Mnangagwa. And I can bet you some of the houses that we saw at the beginning of that video clip were being built for the war veterans. And if they're not complete, they will never be completed. The roads themselves, whatever repairs had been carried out in preparation for the celebrations, that is it. Mnangagwa has moved on, and so has everybody else. The whole thing was meant to give the impression that things are working in Zimbabwe, when in reality, they are not. So I come back to the question again, do the people themselves realize that Zimbabwe is a failed state? And if they do, have they given up?
My answer is, people are now realizing what ZANU PF has done and what ZANU PF is offering. You know, don't let these numbers fool you that you are seeing that are queued up there. Most of them have been bussed around the whole country. So you should at least expect a couple of thousands after being bussed from all over the country that has got over 14 million. So that's a possibility. But you know you go onto social media, you go on to ask the ordinary person in the street, they know what ZANU PF has done. They know. And most of the guys that are actually there in that queue, they have been forced to go. These are the rural people. And when I see people like this here queuing up in the streets, and waiting to get given, food, and I think of Margaret Dongo. She says that ZANU PF has purposely left the people, especially in the rural areas, very impoverished. That this chicken and chips is a Christmas gift for them. They hardly have such delicacies. So when that opportunity comes, they take it with both hands. But the majority of Zimbabweans out there, they know that ZANU PF has failed. The problem that is there and the problem that lies is very few of us know what needs to be done to undo all this. That is where our problem is. The recognition, the identification, the definition part, I think most of us have got it. But the problem is, how do we get ourselves out of this mess? That is where our problem lies.
Well, I think I can honestly say that after 45 years, we should have figured out by now that things are not going on well, that Zimbabwe is going in the wrong direction. And it's not as if it's rocket science. The main reason why Zimbabwe is a failed state is that the country has been stuck with this corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical regime for 45 years. And it has taken its toll. On the economic front, the country is in economic ruins. On the political front, the regime has forced the country to have such mediocre leaders. There is political paralysis. It has corrupted the opposition. It has corrupted its own ruling party, that there really is no political alternative. And people should have realized it. I totally agree that with what Margaret Loko said, that the rural people are intimidated. So we should not be looking to the people who are intimidated to come up with a way out. We should be looking to those who are not intimidated, the urban voters, the Zimbabweans in the diaspora. I really have got to be honest with myself. I do not see the urban voters seriously sitting down now and saying, after 45 years of independence, we are in trouble. We've got to do something to get out of this mess. I don't see them doing that. I don't see the millions of Zimbabweans in the diaspora doing the same thing. Why? I can't figure it out. As far as I can see, I think some of them have just simply resigned to the political status quo. And this is Zimbabwe's tragedy. If it was a human being at 45 years old, you're old enough to have your own family. Indeed, at that age, if you married when you were 20 and had a child, the child will be 25 and will probably be married in 10. And so you'll be a great parent. And if at that age you still cannot have the common sense to realize that the country is in a mess, the country is a failed state, and you really need to sit up and pay attention and do something about it, then I don't think you'll ever do that. And that is the problem. This is a day of reflection. How many people out there are really sitting down and saying, we really need to do something about this? And that is what is worrying me, Ben.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I mean, look, we're just the past month, we had the whole Geza movement, and so forth. How easy it was to convince even the learned individuals in Zimbabwe. A character like Yokaya Mabunu would come and paint a picture that would make Chiwenga look like a saint. And even the learned would actually start wanting him to be the next president. You know, for us, or for me, I would personally say, our desperation stinks. And, you know, anybody at this point, anybody can just con us into believing absolutely anything. We are so desperate that we would believe anything, whether it be a lie or not. We knew Chiwenga and who he is, and who he is right now, not who he was. Who he is. He's still a ZANU PF member. He's still with the ZANU PF. But we believe that he was the next best thing to happen to Zimbabwe. I mean, for me, that is worrying. And I agree with you to say, if we can be conned by somebody like Yuka Mabun, ah, I'm, it's really pathetic now.
Yeah, it is. I think it is sad that we have proved to those or detractors before independence who said we are incapable of self governance. All we have done the last 45 years is prove that we are indeed incapable of self governing. Albert Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. We have had 45 years of rigged elections. How we have failed to realize that we are having a process that is totally meaningless. Beggars belief. By now, we should know what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections. Other countries, Botswana, South Africa, they have successfully held elections, free, fair, and credible elections. The right to free, fair, and credible election is more than a right. It is the very essence of good governance. Zimbabweans, if they were given a chance, they would have voted this ZANU-PF regime out of office a long time ago. But they can't because the regime keeps rigging elections. And why we have not woken up to the reality of ZANU-PF rigging the elections and coming up with a way out of stopping them. Beggars belief. This is why I said at the beginning that it seems many Zimbabweans have given up, that they will never be able to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. And thus, in their narrow-mindedness, keep participating in flawed elections that are so flawed, so illegal. Anyone can tell you the only way we can get out of this is to put your foot down and say, no, we are not going to continue participating in flawed elections. But somehow these people are easily conned into believing that they can win rigged elections. And so we can look forward to 2028 when Zimbabweans will be conned to participate in another flawed election, give ZANU-PF legitimacy, give Chamisa and company a few gravy train seats, and perpetuate the dictatorship. That is so sad and depressing. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
In closing, I would like to leave maybe a message of hope. But we have to accept the reality that is there on the ground. 45 years since our first independence, you know, we have been doing the same thing over and over again, trying to get rid of the ZANU PF regime. And clearly, this is now a sign to say, by ourselves and by our means, we have failed. But there is hope, like I said. We have been given advice. And for me, I think it is sound advice on how to get ourselves out of this mess. If we cannot accept that advice, then we are not yet ready to free ourselves from this bondage. The advice and the recommendations that the SADC, the AU, the EU, and all other observer missions gave to Zimbabweans, that advice was not for ZANU PF. That advice was for each and every one of us. Fix your system. Your elections are flawed. That needs to be fixed. And until we agree and we see that we have failed and we need to start listening to advice from others, we will not be able to get out of this mess. So the hope and the message of hope and the way out is clear and defined. It is up to us now to choose. Do we take it or continue in this hellhole? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. I'll give Dr. Neves Mumba, who was the chairperson of the SADC Election Observer Team, what you were just talking about there at the closing of your closing remarks, the need for free, fair, and credible elections, and the need for Zimbabweans to make sure that we have free, fair, and credible elections.
Say to me, Mr. Vice President, go on behalf of SADC, and all I expect from you is to help to give the Zimbabweans a free, fair, and credible election. Those are the only, he said it twice. I need nothing from you, Mr. Vice President, but free, fair, and credible election. You would have done your job. When I was in Zimbabwe, and we were on our way to go and see President Mnangagwa to pay a courtesy call on him, I contacted the president here, President Hakainde Hichilema. I said, Mr. President, we are going to see your colleague. Do you have a word for him? Any greeting, whatever? He said, no. The only thing you tell my colleague is that let's go ahead and give the Zimbabweans a free, fair, and credible election. He repeated the same words. So there was one.
We don't need somebody to tell us that Zimbabwe has failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. After 45 years of independence in this day and age, there really is no excuse why we should not know what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections. But SADC did us a great favor in 2023 and condemned those elections. And now the onus is on us. Are we going to participate in 2028, knowing fully well that without a token, even one token reform implemented, ZANU PF will rig those elections? That should be something every Zimbabwean should be concerned about. But how many Zimbabweans out there are even thinking about it? That, to me, is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. Thank you very much, those of you who were able to join us this evening. I hope you at least will give this your thought. We need to get out of this hellhole, and we owe it to ourselves to do so. Good night.